In 2014, when we introduced five-step training into Ireland, the intention was that we would establish training cohorts which would then merge into or become a supervision group and a peer supervision group. However, we deliver training across such a broad geographical area in Ireland that never actually came into fruition when we went to plan that. In 2020, when we moved our training online, we revisited the option of having peer supervision and clinical supervision groups. So we're currently piloting supervision groups with a view to propose supervision packages to services and organizations who might not have access to that level of support internally. Services can opt in to the accreditation supervision and further ongoing supervision for their staff who have been through the training and are either going through their accreditation or who are accredited practitioners. The aim of the supervision groups, the pilot, is at the moment to alleviate the pressure on services to provide this level of support to trainees, especially where practitioners are coming from organizations where there might not be a manager or other practitioners within the service. Therefore, they aren't able to have specific five-step intervention supervision. So we've established two supervision cohorts based on two trainee cohorts, which as they were run as a pilot, they're going to run for 6 months to support people through the accreditation process, especially as we're all working online. At the moment, we felt that it was important to give them an additional level of support to navigate the accreditation journey while using methods that they might not be that comfortable with or that familiar with. Our training runs sessions for between 10 to 16 participants, depending on how many facilitators are going to be running. And therefore, anyone who is attending those sessions is allowed to opt into the supervision groups. We've had very good feedback initially. We haven't finished the pilot on those supervision groups as of yet, but the feedback is that it is an invaluable resource. So our aim would be going forward to make that self-sufficient would be about ensuring that it's factored in the 6 months post-training supervision with the assessor and trainer is factored into the overall costing of the training. The other option would be that they can buy it as an optional extra to their training. So for services who do have access to a five-step trainer or practitioner, an experienced practitioner, they might not need that. However, some services are working with a very small team, and therefore they will appreciate having some access to that ongoing support. Depending on the numbers of people who are signed up for the supervision, it can be a very cost-effective way for organizations to secure effective training or effective supervision for their trainees. Each month, we explore one topic or one aspect of the intervention, often aligned with the projected stage of the five-step accreditation journey that they would be on. However, we're aware that everyone goes through this journey at a different pace. And so we're very flexible when it comes to the session. We will contact all trainees or all supervision attendees 2 weeks before the session, get numbers of who's going to be attending, and ask for specific case studies or any specific issues which they want raised. On the day, if somebody has other issues which come up or a case study that hasn't been already mentioned, we will consider if there's time to include that at the end. So any issues that arise that fall out of the five-step intervention, we don't address. So we will refer back to their own internal organizational manager in order to deal with that. So if it's around specific risk issues or other aspects of interventions that they offer in their service. We have to have a very tight remit because there could be 16 people within a supervision session, and we don't, first of all, have time, and we're not really governed to deliver general clinical supervision. This is specifically for five-step. We use a combination of peer support and clinical input. So the supervisor and the Zoom coordinator work together on this. We identify what the issues are at the start, we lay it out, and we would initially open it up for the group to encourage a bit of a group discussion and facilitate peer learning. People are at different stages of their intervention or their accreditation and can offer real-time examples of how they've overcome certain issues or how they've dealt with certain key issues that come up. It's also a hope, because we're all working remotely and we're all working across the country, that by creating these cohorts, it will encourage more peer support that specifically around 5-step, that then they can continue after the formal supervision is closed. And we would encourage them then to join or to create a peer supervision. We can facilitate that at the network. However, we need to think about the feasibility of that long term and what cost would be required to do that. But there's different levels of intervention that we can offer and different levels of support that we can offer. And in order to promote high quality supervision, we need to make sure that there's a very clear expectation from the cohort about the supervision session. What is the aim of the supervision session? What we expect from the people who are being supervised, what level of participation they're required to bring. If somebody wants to come and observe, that's absolutely fine, but we will still encourage them to give their views or opinions, even if they haven't had direct experience of an issue. It's just to try and encourage people to feel more confident with the language that's used in 5-step, to feel more confident with the actual steps, and to reduce the feeling of going at it alone, which can happen at the moment with the way we're all working remotely. We would like to replicate this model of supervision. One tip we would definitely suggest or recommend is to include it, if you're doing online training, to include it and factor it in as a cost for your trainees, if it's something that you charge for 5-step training. Depending on the number of people that are signing up to your supervision, it could change the cost for the organization that's paying for the training. However, it needs to be considered more and as an essential part of the intervention, opposed to a benefit or an optional extra. I think it is really important. And after going through the pilot series recently, it's really brought our awareness to how much things are coming up during the supervision session which they wouldn't have identified through the training. So once they've gone to apply certain aspects of it, that's where it becomes very real for them. And it's been really enriching for the trainers and also for the trainees regarding how they found the supervision sessions. When identifying key things that come up during our supervision sessions, it's been quite enlightening about different aspects. One part of the supervision, or one main element of the supervision, is a lot more focus on the FMQ, getting an awful lot more buy-in to how rich the data is that they get from that. And that has helped inform how we now deliver the training and how much more time we spend on delivering the FMQ aspect of that training. So the link between the FMQ and the individual sessions, it takes a while until the trainees are actually very familiar with the FMQ for them to really make that link and to be able to really identify how it goes. Also around the different views on how people use the scoring. Some people use the scoring during their last session to explain or to validate the affected family members' change by saying, oh, well, there has been a change in your score, so that's good. Or equally, they might turn around and say, well, actually, you're telling me that you feel better, but your score isn't necessarily reflecting that. And then what's going on? And then through that exploration, it helps to identify that maybe they weren't necessarily thinking about 5-step when they were referring to that particular item on the questionnaire. So that's formed a very large part of the supervision. The other aspect, which has come up frequently, is about trying to use 5-step when somebody is in a very large crisis or is in a state of chaos. So traditionally, practitioners have felt very much at a loss about how to apply an intervention when somebody is in a very chaotic situation or environment. However, over the last year, it's been very difficult for people to find time that they can actually, focus specifically in the ideal condition to their intervention. So we've supported the trainees to work around the circumstance that they're faced with, that the 5-step method is actually beneficial for people in chaos and crisis. And it's just about how they would apply that intervention in those particular settings. If they're able to sit down and hold that information in their head and think about the content of the session and focus during that hour session, then it's going to have a benefit. It's going to be helpful for them to be able to think about, how can I use these skills in order to deal with my crisis or deal with this chaos? If they're unable to do that, if they're only getting 15 minutes here and there, they're not really focusing on the intervention, then it is about holding on to that service user until they're able to think about their situation and actually apply what they're learning and look at the exercises in the handbook. So we've just kind of given them a little bit more of a leeway in saying there is not necessarily an ideal condition of when you would deliver this intervention. You have to kind of roll with the punches a little bit. So helping them kind of develop confidence in doing it that way. So that's one aspect of what has come up for supervisors or for supervisees during the supervision sessions. The other third thing that comes up during supervision, which has come up quite a bit, is really clarifying the difference between step 2 and step 5. From the outset, when looking at the actual intervention and going through the training, there's been no issues regarding the difference between step 2 and step 5. The differences are quite clear. However, what some of the trainees have found when they've gone out to apply it is that they find themselves a little bit at a loss as when it comes to really explaining the difference between step 2 and step 5. So information needs and summarizing and wrapping up and further information. So that's been very enriching. It's actually given us a very good insight to how to really focus a lot more attention on that during training, so that we're really clear about how you focus your step 2 and then how you use step 5. And interestingly, the last supervision session we had a very rich discussion about how the FMQ is used in step 5. So some practitioners had been using it at the start of step 5. However, it's almost like considering step 5 as a 2-part session, in the fact that you complete your summarizing, you do your FMQ, and then you leave yourself sufficient time to go through the FMQ to help identify if there is any other needs that are coming up. If they're not showing an overall improvement or they're not feeling an improvement, then what is that and where is that going to leave you? So those are the things which have come up during supervision, and that for us as the Zoom coordinator and the 5-step training coordinators is very enriching for me. And for the trainers, it's offered another aspect to their role, which has been enjoyable for them. It's allowed them to really consider how people are using the information that they're training and how it's being applied, and identifying any areas where we need to spend more time during the training, that we can really drive those points home. So that's, I would be very happy to promote it and to facilitate peer supervision groups, just from even the process of having people at different stages of their accreditation that have come through and used it. Thanks.